June 27th, 2026. Well, I want to get into the discussion a little bit about the UAP Disclosure Forum that occurred recently here a couple of days ago. And of course, I guess it was a week or so earlier, there was also the press conference, which had the normal group of members of the House and also of that group as well as David Grush. And so there's a bit of a push on to get disclosure going. In addition, we've had three groups of videos released by the Department of War, which have revealed a variety of interesting things, of course. And of course, that's material is very interesting. And in fact, so that, I guess well, I did get to see. I haven't get to see all of it, but they did. I guess the News Nation kind of put it out there on YouTube, and at least that's the version I saw. At least parts of it. I didn't see everything. They had a lot of normal people there. They had Chris Mellon, and they had I saw Rounds made a speech, and Representative Luna was involved and was pushing for some kind of a amnesty for the people in the program if they would come forward and disclose what's going on and all that. And I have a few thoughts on the whole subject, of course, as always, one of my areas of focus. And I'll carry a few things in the end of the video too, which you might be interested in as well, on some of the current affairs. But I want to focus first on this subject. I think that this seemed to be a little bit almost redundant what I was hearing, as if they're still kind of back thinking like Blue Book or something. Like, well, what we really need to do, we need to, look into these objects and get better pictures of them and it's like, can we really prove they're real? And of course, they got this task force that was put up with Avi Loeb and his group of people, which they brought in Michael Shermer as the skeptic. And I'm like, why do we need Michael Shermer? I mean, why do we need him? I mean, my point is that the real issue, if there's going to be any real disclosure, more than just ufology as normal, if you will, it's got to come from the government. And it looks to me like if they really want to get something done, they need to think in terms of, how do we really get there? I mean, obviously, everything that's been released in these three tranches of disclosure from the Department of War that I've seen, none of them were ever classified higher than secret. Just basic, ordinary secret, and that's not anything like the real security that's around the real program and real crash retrievals. I mean, all this stuff has got to be probably top secrets and special access, and probably, waived unacknowledged special access, the deepest of secrets. This stuff probably is, and of course, none of that is coming out at all. And so to get to it, of course, the real question is: do the appropriate people, does Pete Hegseth really know where it's located in the government? I don't know. Does he really know? Does the president really know? And I think that I know they're now dealing with some of the other people there and the staff and so forth. And it seems like they're interested in getting it going. And I think one of the problems that we're left with is I don't even think that the sort of, they're talking about guarantees of people keeping their clearance or not being prosecuted, but I don't think anybody's ever going to be prosecuted for revealing a UFO secret. That's kind of my opinion. I mean, how could you prosecute them? In open court? Really? I mean, essentially that prosecution would be a form of disclosure, right? I mean, that you would be basically saying, the defense would be basically claiming, okay, what secret did I reveal? And the answer is, well, this thing about the UAP and this and that and the other thing. Okay, if you're going to put that on record under oath that that's true, you just disclosed, right? See what I'm getting at? You can't really do it that way. So what we seem to have going on is quite the obvious, that it's a mixture of loyalty on the one hand and fear on the other hand that's kept this thing under control, to trying to discredit people, a lot of compartmentalization, extreme compartmentalization, so that the people in general don't know enough usually to do that much damage for the most part. And it also seems, at least, I think 3 names have come up that we can get into here, who apparently have met with their untimely demise, and that is, and of course the disappearance of General McCaslin, all suggest that there really is a real threat of what might happen to these people, and it's not like just they're going to lose their security clearance. If you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, or you can follow me on Rumble as well, because I post there too. So anyhow, so that kind of gives us an idea. So, but the person in administration, it seems to me, that knows the most, in fact, is of course the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, who in his National Security Advisor role would have the highest level of clearance, basically. Now, does he have the need to know? That's always the question there. Meaning that there's really nothing that would prevent him getting the information if he could get it. There would be no violation because he has the authorization to get it. The problem is, does he know where to get it and who will tell it to him? Well, actually, he probably does. Given the document that Grush came forward with, it seems like the most valuable thing probably are the names that he's got and the titles, if you will. Because, let's face it, if somebody knew that at this particular base there was a UAP that had been recovered, was stored there, and Grush knew that and put that in his report, the people in the program probably got a copy, and they might have decided if anybody's going to go there to get it moved to another location, so when they get there, they'll only have an empty hangar, right? And all the people that know about it will no longer be present. There'll be a new crew that doesn't know anything, and yeah, right. And I think that that has been probably the pattern we're likely to see. But if you know the people who actually had actual access and knows more than Grush does, but he knows the names, there's a simple solution, it seems to me, would be to call them into the White House, since they're mostly government employees. And even if they're contractors, I mean, do you think the contractor's going to refuse a call from the president if he wants? And bring them into the Situation Room, adequately secure facility, and start interrogating them, basically. I mean, it looks to me to work your way through them to other people and get to the people that really run the show, and then have a nice meeting with them and figure out what the situation is, what it is we really want to disclose and what we don't want to disclose, what the real issues are about it. And then from there on, the administration can make a decision to go a little bit further than we've had so far. Because I don't think that just relying on more and more whistleblowers, I think we probably have enough of those already, I think. I don't think that's the real issue. I mean, from Congress's point of view, maybe that's the real issue, but really I don't think that Congress is going to be able to break it down because they're not unified enough on the issue to make that decision. But if the president really wants to go there, I think working through Marco Rubio and the information that the whistleblowers have provided to the various congressional committees and to the Inspector General of the intelligence community, I think from that data and then working your way through those names to the right people, you'll eventually figure out who really has the goods and then decide what the real issues are about disclosure. And then from there, we make a decision. My own thought is what we definitely should be able to disclose is the fact that the craft are real, that we do have recoveries, and that we have bodies of aliens in some cases, and we can, I guess, reveal what they're like, what we've learned from them, maybe how many different species we've detected, that we have positive proof of, and then we might say there are others that maybe we have some information or rumors about we haven't confirmed. You know, is it just one species or several? It seems like it's at least a few. It seems to be the case. And I'm not going to go through all those things. I think we've probably heard them if we're into the subject. And so I think that I don't see how the biologics themselves can be that big of a national security issue, basically. That is, you know, what might be an issue would be the actual craft and the equipment and technologies that we might have recovered if we've been able to learn enough about it to do anything with it. And depending on what that is, that's probably where the issue lies. And the other problem will be, as I addressed the issue, that certain people may have met an untimely demise by not being reliable. So that leads to a situation where, what do we do about that? I mean, some people are talking about an amnesty for everybody involved, but the point I make here is that murder is generally a state crime, right? And even if the federal government chooses not to pursue it, if somebody was murdered in a given state, so in the state, actually the local DA and wherever it occurred, if that information was revealed, could conceivably file charges. I don't know, maybe national security could keep them from effectively prosecuting it by not releasing the appropriate information. I don't know. I think it'd be, I think, put it this way, they've looked at the idea, Coldhar's mentioned that the South African Truth and Reconciliation hearings that were made at the end of the apartheid regime when Mandela became president. But different countries have different constitutional and legal structures, and given how that we're so federated, we're having trouble, dealing with the illegal aliens and stuff because the local people will not cooperate, and you can't apparently just order them to, and so you see what I'm saying. So by analogy, the same thing is perhaps true here. If somebody murdered an individual person in a given state to keep them quiet, you can see how that, also this would be, I think, a pretty big embarrassment. So that may be one of the things that's holding things back. The other thing may be just some of the things that are involved in what we've learned are going to be probably, as they say, on the area of ontological shock to a lot of people out there, particularly the psionic stuff. Let's just categorize that. I think that may be a bit of an issue, and the degree to which that has been pursued. But anyhow, that's just kind of my thought on it. So to me, the real issue still rests with the administration. They've certainly taken the first steps with the releases they've done so far. And though there's a lot of tantalizing information in those releases, which we could spend time on. It's not trivial. I mean, I did a space show where I went through just some of the, I think, the second tier stuff that were the videos. And that hasn't been released yet, so I hope it will be at some point so I could link to it so people could see it. But there's a backlog because of certain personality problems that the host has had. I mean, in terms of medical appointments and also meetings, a birthday party event with his family and so forth, which got him backlogged a little bit. So we'll see if we get that in the future, but hopefully we will. He's doing a great job there anyhow. And he's at least keeping up to date with all the new ones. But the point I'm making is that's one reason why we can't see it at this point. But I thought that was kind of interesting to go through, at least my viewpoint. I think the stuff is more meaningful than people think it is, but it's not going to satisfy Michael Shermer, right? or Mick West. So that's one of the things that we've got going on, and we'll have to see, how that goes. At any rate, so that's kind of my thoughts on the subject. We'll see what happens next. I'm kind of hoping the administration will push forward on this, although they've got a lot on their plate right now, as you can imagine, with the Iran situation, with the Ukraine situation, with the Venezuela earthquakes that just happened. I mean, and a variety of other things that are going on in the world, trying to get a ceasefire in Lebanon. But you know what I'm saying. Anyway, so that's kind of my thought on that subject. Now, going on to the other issues, I'll close this thing by going into some other contemporary. Of course, we just had an incident the other day where the Iranians apparently fired a drone at a cargo ship and apparently damaged the bridge. Apparently no personnel were killed or injured, I don't think, fortunately. And this may cause some, and then apparently we've now retaliated to say don't do that. So we'll see how that plays out. I tend to doubt the ceasefire is going to completely break down, and we are getting a lot more ships and oil shipments coming out of the Strait of Hormuz, and that seems to be moving along. I don't think it's going to fail, but I think this is not going to be a smooth ride. I think, anything in the Middle East, anybody that follows Middle East at all know that every ceasefire gets broken and then they go back and get it back in place again, then it gets broken. That's the way the Middle East is. That's just, then the case, since we've so disrupted the leadership of Iran, I'm not sure the people we're negotiating with can completely control every faction that has the ability to fire a drone at somebody, So that's kind of how that goes. And then finally, I guess the latest thing, that's a few days back, but the victory of the three extreme Democrat socialists defeating the incumbents in the three districts in New York, of course, is getting a lot of play. And apparently there's a kind of a growing conflict, I guess, in the Democrat Party, because the Democrats in the ultra-liberal zones probably are willing to go along with all these new radicals. Some call them communists. I tend to call them neo-Marxist. I think it's a little more sophisticated on the one hand, and the idea is suggesting the same thing that Stalin was, or even Brezhnev was in the Soviet Union days. I don't think their game is exactly that. After all, and of course, they're probably a bunch of major liars. There's no way any kind of a socialist regime like this is going to get rid of the police, obviously. Without the police, or something, and they might call it something else, they got to have an enforcement body or people won't obey them, right? So they got to have an enforcement body, so let's call it the police. They may want to call it something else, your friendly helpers or something. But the point is, there has to be an enforcement mechanism. So they're deceiving people, and they're promising things they ultimately can't deliver, I suspect. And they will definitely wreck the economy if they get in control, but there's only a few of them so far. So we'll have to see how that goes. It may actually end up being an advantage of Republicans. It may, because it's possible that what would happen is that, we can use that as a campaign issue in some of the swing states and win some victories there, and hopefully that'll happen. And certainly the thing in Maine, I still think that guy's a little over the top, and I think that the guy in Michigan, I think, or the one in Texas also, all look to me to be spots that we might have a good chance to do something. And I wouldn't count too much on the very early polls, because if when you just come out of a primary where the Democrats, have picked their person, or pretty much they have their front runner, and say the Republicans in some places like, say, Texas, had a hard-fought primary with a lot of vicious negative ads on the part of the incumbent against the other individual, Paxton. That is going to be, a situation where it may take a while for the wounds to heal and everybody get their head on straight and figure out what they need to do. It would also be very helpful if President Trump would quit attacking people in the Senate. I just read an article back before this how one of these people might actually switch to being a Democrat. And I'm like, he doesn't seem to have common sense about this stuff. For instance, the two people he takes credit for having defeated in the primaries recently may become people that will enjoy voting against what he wants, because their political future is pretty much over. So they got nothing to lose. He doesn't seem to understand that somehow. Anyway, that's that. But at any rate, we'll see how we do here. I still don't see that the generic ballot is that negative compared to Trump's approval ratings, some of which I think are kind of bogus too. I saw the latest Rasmussen, and he kind of improved up to something like -7 or something, which is pretty stronger than I've seen in a while. So, and some of the other ones were earlier. So maybe things are improving now as we get the gas prices coming down, get the war over with, hopefully, maybe with a few we may have to have a few reminders, but you know what I mean, things you got to do. All right, so that's about it for this time. As always, I'll be posting this on YouTube and Rumble, and the address of my social media accounts are in the description below. So all for this time.